I am sorry. I am sorry because initially I passed on Absolute Wonder Woman when it began. I just wasn't interested in her. Absolute Batman got me into reading Superman, Green Lantern, and Martian Manhunter, but Wonder Woman just wasn't something I was super interested in. I bought the first trade volume out of curiosity, and I liked it, don't get me wrong, but I decided not to stick with it. And then Batman pushed me back into the run with a crossover between him and Wonder Woman. I was drawn to how, even in a universe where things are filled with evil and hate, a place where even Superman has lost his objective positivity and hope, Diana continues to be a shining beacon of love and compassion to the world. I went through this whole spiel in the Batman video already, but Wonder Woman is someone who I've always seen as one of the default superheroes. A character who is so deeply ingrained in American culture that you know who she is purely by cultural osmosis. As a result, I never became interested in her character. But man, this book is just so fucking good. In hindsight, this run feels like it was tailor-made for me and my interests. It's packed full of new takes on Greek myth, it turns one of the most famous characters in history into a queer icon, and it has some of the best art in the whole Absolute lineup, seconded only by Martian Manhunter. So yeah, my apologies to Kelly Thompson and Hayden Sherman. I was not familiar with your game. The Absolute Universe is... Okay, I explained all this in my Batman video already, so I'm going to keep this part brief. The Absolute Universe is a new initiative from DC aimed at new and old readers alike. The main premise of the universe is that it is a place where the heroes are meant to be missing core parts of their identity. Batman is poor, Green Lantern doesn't have the Lantern Core, Superman didn't have the Kents, that sort of thing. In addition to this, there is a big bad evil guy named Darkseid who is deliberately putting his thumb on the scale of justice so that the world tilts toward evil at all times. The major change to Diana is that instead of growing up on Themyscira surrounded by her Amazon sisters, she was instead raised in hell by Circe the Witch. What exactly happened to the Amazons isn't known to us right now. Circe tells Diana that the Amazons, quote, protected the world above from the oldest of monsters, which can mean just about anything, and we'll get into that later. Fair warning that when discussing Diana's backstory, I'm going to be jumping across multiple issues. Most of the Absolute books have been following a pattern where the present day story is told in conjunction with flashbacks showing the origins of the heroes, and Absolute Wonder Woman follows that by exploring Diana's time on the Wild Isle in conjunction with her present day exploits. Diana's story begins when the sun god Apollo drops Diana off on the Wild Isle, home of Circe the Witch. Apollo tells Circe that the Amazons committed a great crime of some kind and they are being punished for it. He tells her that Diana is the princess of Themyscira, the last Amazon, and she is now Circe's responsibility. Apollo bans Circe from ever speaking the word Amazon so that Diana may never know who she is or where she came from. After Apollo leaves, Circe is kind of like, fuck this kid, it ain't mine, and she lets a snake crawl into Diana's basket. Diana then proceeds to literally yeet the snake out of her basket. This parallels the story of Heracles, who killed two snakes when they crawled into his crib as a baby. The difference here is that Heracles outright killed those snakes, while Diana just throws it away from her. From a very early age, Diana's compassionate heart shines bright, and Circe grows to love her as her own daughter. During this time, Diana is trained not only by Circe, but by a rotation of goddesses from the Greek pantheon. Hecate, Aphrodite, Athena, Artemis, and Persephone have all made appearances so far in the run, and I imagine there are more to come. In a flashback in issue 6, Hecate tells Circe that Hera predicted Zeus would come for the Amazons. That prediction caused her to set certain plans in motion that would allow for Diana to be raised under Circe's tutelage so she could one day take action against the gods.
Everything we do is to fashion her into a weapon. We love the child as we love few things, but do not be confused by the reason for her existence. The very point of her is to place an undefeatable weapon into the heart of a system that must be disrupted, if not destroyed.
If you were trying to make a weapon, why also make her a kind little girl who feels every sling and arrow with the entirety of her being? It's unfathomably cruel.
She is a little girl because men are dismissive of little girls, and thus she will be unseen. She is the kindest human being we could possibly conceive of, because that, above everything else, is what monsters do not understand. But also, She is simply herself, Cersei. I don't know that any of us could even have imagined her this way. This pure, this compassionate, this full of love. She's a miracle. But it does not mean she won't need to know how to fight. It is already in her. In a different, better world, it would have been allowed to blossom in a more traditional and organic way. The way of her people. This is not that better world, and so we must improvise.
Goddess,
Do not ask your question. You are right. Ears are turning our way. All of us is your answer. It will take a village, as they used to say, and the constant change makes it harder for any watching to understand what we are doing. Have faith and hope, Cersei. We are only just the beginning.
Diana's time on the Wild Isle is spent combat training and practicing witchcraft, preparing for herself for the day when she emerges on the surface. One day, a man by the name of Steve Trevor washes up on the shores of the Wild Isle. Diana and Cersei take him in and nurse him back to health, and Diana finds a ritual that allows her to send Steve back to the surface. It is here that we understand a key component of the magic system in the absolute universe. Magic requires sacrifice, and a price must always be paid for it. The ritual to send Steve to the surface is a powerful one and requires a great sacrifice. Diana and Cersei had both mused over why Steve appeared on the island. They were uncertain if it was a trap, coincidence, or mere chance. Diana eventually comes to the conclusion that Steve's presence on the island is a test for her. If she is to be the savior of humanity, a great hero to the world, then she must be willing to make great sacrifices in the name of justice. She believes that Steve is her first test, to send a good man back to his home and his people. The price paid for the ritual is Diana's dominant arm. She and Cersei conduct the ritual in the dead of night and send Steve back to his home of Gateway City. She eventually fashions a new arm with a spell that replaces the one she severed. Diana will eventually reunite with Steve on the surface during the run's first major arc. The Last Amazon is Absolute Wonder Woman's first major storytelling arc, spanning issues 1 through 5. The first issue starts with an attack on Gateway City by these creatures called Harbingers. Wonder Woman makes her big debut to the world by fighting the Harbingers and pushing them back. In my Batman video, I made the point that the first fight of the series does the work of immediately establishing the tone for what kind of fighter Absolute Batman is. I would argue that this fight does something similar for Diana. The fight takes place across the first 2 issues, and it ends with Diana using one of her 3 lassos on the Prime Harbinger. The lasso she has chosen is Nemesis, forged by Cersei with the blood of Prometheus, the scales of a basilisk, and the blessing of Demeter. Nemesis burns whoever it ensnares with a fire proportional to their sins, which makes it incredibly painful for the Prime Harbinger. She says she will only release him if he agrees to fuck off and leave the city alone. This exchange demonstrates that while Diana is more than capable of flooring people, she is someone who prefers to sort things out with diplomacy. That doesn't mean she's incapable of putting her foot down though, something which is demonstrated to us in the next scene. The US military was deployed to Gateway City to deal with the Harbingers, and among them is Steve Trevor. After a short reunion on the beach, Steve brings Wonder Woman back to his superiors, which is where shit kinda hits the fan. Commander Cole berates Diana for acting on her own without military approval or coordination, and she initially tries to be understanding and compassionate with him while setting a firm boundary that she will not be used as an asset by the military. She then gets back to trying to coordinate evacuations, telling them that something worse is coming. Those monsters are exactly what I called them. Harbingers. They are a warning of something even worse that is coming. Commander Cole initially snaps to his senses and starts ordering an evac, but he makes the mistake of threatening both Diana and Steve.
And you, if you won't play ball, I'll have you court-martialed.
Commander, that seems...
You're out of line, Trevor. The rest of the world may think you're some kind of superhero meets Jesus, but I know you're just a man. You could be court-martialed too.
Are you finished?
Yes.
Here's the problem, Commander. I think we both know you need me quite badly given what just happened, but I don't need you at all. So perhaps rethink how you would like to approach this conversation, and let's try again when you've calmed down. Hopefully, that will be before any more innocent people have lost their lives. I'll be outside feeding my horse. The fuck does a dead horse eat? Magic! Diana's characterization throughout the various flashbacks shows her as acting very kind and compassionate towards anything that will listen. She prefers to solve problems by talking things through with the person rather than using her fists. She tries to take the same approach when dealing with other people, but she will not hesitate to shut someone down if they're being an asshole. Her primary focus is on saving lives and helping people, and she will not accept anybody standing in the way of that. Commander Cole thankfully swallows his pride enough to continue with the evacuation, which is good because what's coming next is pretty fucked up and scary. The monster that comes after the Harbingers is something called a tetracide. Tetracide translates to the four killer because it kills in four ways: death of fear, mind, body, and soul. The thing that is the biggest concern at the moment is death of fear. Death of fear is a sound the tetracide emits that will draw everyone in the city towards it. When they touch the tetracide, the other three deaths take place. To nullify the effects of the sound, Diana casts a spell that makes everyone in the city deaf. Before she does this, she tries to attack the tetracide and it traps her magic arm. She dispels her arm in order to escape its hold, and after deafening the city, she takes a quick detour to get it back. This detour introduces us to the rest of Diana's supporting cast: a historian named Barbara Minerva, a witch named Gia Candy, and her sister Etta Candy. No idea who these people are. If these guys are in the mainline universe, I don't know. I think it's better for these videos if I do minimal research on the mainline and take the comics as they are. Anyways, Wonder Woman collects some spell ingredients from Gia, resummons her arm, and goes out to fight the tetracide again. I mentioned earlier that Diana has 3 different lassos. She used the first one, Nemesis, to fight the Harbingers, and she will use the second one to defeat the tetracide. Thesia, or Sacrifice in English, was the first lasso that Circe made for Diana. Circe is rather notorious for her powers of transmogrification. She once turned Odysseus' men into pigs during his voyages. Sacrifice carries her powers of transmogrification. Sacrifice can transform anything it holds, but what it holds determines the shape of the transformation, meaning Diana can use it on herself to transform into whatever she wants. So, she uses it to turn herself into Medusa, turn the tetracide into stone, and stop it from attacking the city. Steve then goes outside and helps her to remember who she is, so she can revert back to her original form. And with a flying punch from halfway across the city, the tetracide is no more. The last Amazon ends with Diana scoring her first major victory on the surface, making a bombastic entry to the world. This victory, however, is short-lived when a hand reaches out of the ground and drags her down to hell. But before I begin analyzing what happens next, I want to take a slight tangent on Diana's lassos. Specifically, I want to talk about Sacrifice because I find its properties to be absolutely fascinating. The creator of Wonder Woman was a man named William Moulton Marston. Marston was a feminist who lived in a poly relationship with his wife and another woman. He wanted Wonder Woman to be a tool of empowerment for women and for her to represent the modern American woman. Unfortunately, Marston was still a man writing a woman, and well-intentioned he might have been, there were still plenty of thinly veiled fetishes in Golden Age Wonder Woman. The most famous thing from this era is something called Aphrodite's Law, where Diana could be completely subdued if she was put into bondage by a man. She did, of course, carry around her own magic bondage rope, which gave her some power, but an overwhelming amount of Golden Age Wonder Woman consists of her being tied up in very suggestive poses. I find this fascinating because the lassos that Diana has in Absolute Wonder Woman feel like nods to their origins while also subverting them. Nemesis is of course the typical "I'm going to tie you up and hurt you" type of thing, but Sacrifice is about empowering its user or victim. When Diana uses Sacrifice on herself, she is willingly putting herself into bondage and she is drawing strength from that. What once was the only way to defeat her is now a way to make her even stronger. It also gives her perspective on the forms that she takes. The thing she took away from the form of Medusa is that it's an absolute hell. Medusa can never look into another person's eyes again and truly feel their love. She will never be truly seen ever again. In the Wonder Woman annual, Diana uses Sacrifice on Medusa to remove her curse. Of course, she can't force her will onto Medusa. She can't make Medusa turn back into herself. Sacrifice transforms the victim into what the victim wants. It's all about choice. Medusa could have chosen to turn into an even worse monster, but instead she chose to return to her normal form before she was cursed. BDSM, as I understand it, is about choice and boundaries. Safety, guardrails, and trust must be established and respected at every step of the exchange. If any of those things are broken, then the scene falls apart and things can get very traumatic or even dangerous. Aphrodite's law was not a choice. If Diana was tied up, then she's fucked. Sacrifice is a choice. It's a far more respectful and empowering version of Marston's original ideas. Alright, where was I? Right. Diana gets yanked down to hell by Hades, who's really pissed at her for escaping hell. Nobody is allowed to leave the underworld, and it is Hades' job to enforce that. How exactly Diana escaped is unknown to us, but it isn't super important either. When she is brought before Hades, he orders her to remove all her weapons. The sequence that follows is filled with a lot of close-ups of Diana removing pieces of her armor and equipment, and the dialogue in the scene frames it as Diana mocking Hades for watching her strip herself. I am going to restrain myself from going on another BDSM tangent. Hades orders one of his servants to bring him the Nemesis lasso, and the lasso fries him when he tries to pick it up. This ends up piquing Hades' interest, and the rest of issue 6 is spent with Diana telling Hades how she got the Nemesis lasso. The first story she tells is how she climbed the mountain that Prometheus was chained to and asked for a sample of his blood. She unchained him from the mountain and convinced the eagle not to eat his liver anymore. It's worth noting that this isn't permanent freedom for Prometheus. He still can't leave the mountain, and just because the eagles aren't coming for him anymore doesn't mean something else won't come. Regardless, it's a welcome bit of respite for him, and he repays Diana by raising Pegasus from the dead and giving her a chunk of his flesh and blood to take home. The second story she tells is about the last living basilisk, which Diana killed. Zeus was kinda pissed that Diana still lived, so he kept sending the basilisk after her. She kept trying to reason with the basilisk and spare its life, but eventually she followed it to its lair and killed it. She made herself blind before entering so it couldn't kill her with its gaze, and she took away her sense of smell so she could use a potion that would overwhelm the basilisk. She and Circe then harvested everything they could from the basilisk, using its flesh and blood to create Nemesis. Diana is presented with a choice in Hades' arena. Hades presents her with two doors. The first has certain doom behind it, and the other is a path to the surface. But if Diana goes to the surface, she will be barred from entering the underworld, and she will never see Circe again. Circe and Hecate both planned for this, so they talked to Persephone and got her to give Diana a magic pomegranate seed. The myth of Persephone involves her eating 6 pomegranate seeds from the underworld, which means she must spend at least 6 months out of every year in hell. It's why the seasons change. Persephone says she learned that lesson, quote, the hard way, which has some implications about consent that I'll talk about later. Diana learned about the seeds from Persephone and willingly made the choice to eat one, which means that even though she took the path to the surface, she must now stay in hell for 1 month out of every year, ensuring she would get to see Circe. With Diana and Circe free from Hades, Diana flies Circe back to the Wild Isle and returns to the surface.
This video is sponsored by viewers like you. As a small creator, I lack access to things like brand deals and sponsorships in order to pay my bills, which is why I am 100% reliant on you. The simple act of watching my video and sharing it with your friends is immensely helpful, but if you would like to support me directly, then you can go to patreon.com/circle11. Becoming a patron can grant you access to the Discord server, exclusive behind-the-scenes content, and early cuts of my videos. You can even see pictures of my dog. Go to patreon.com/circle11 to subscribe today. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you for your support.
Now that we've dissected the first major arc of Wonder Woman, I want to take a quick detour to talk about the artwork and mythology before we move on to the rest of the run. The art of Absolute Wonder Woman is absolutely fantastic. It's the best looking book in the universe right now, and I want to make sure I pay homage to the people on the team. Artist Hayden Sherman, along with colorist Jordi Belair and letterer Becca Carey, have all done a phenomenal job. The first thing I want to highlight is how space is utilized in the book. The panels in Absolute Wonder Woman often weave together using all sorts of shapes and formations. The book frequently has scenes that take up large 2-page spreads and are filled with incredibly vivid detail. The scene that I keep coming back to is this spread from the annual where Diana is praying to Athena. The scene uses the design of the environment and the segments in Diana's prayer space as natural panels to paint scenes inside of. The scene is also very smart with where it places certain things and where your gaze goes. English speakers read things left to right, top to bottom, so you start with Diana in the top left praying to Athena, then you move to the amphora filled with blood, and then you see the scenes of praying and fighting in the first ring. Then you're drawn to the next speech bubble where Diana prays, before spreading out across the rest of the second ring of panels. The third ring then reads directly from left to right. The panel does an excellent job of conveying the idea that Diana has spent an exceptionally long amount of time begging Athena for answers interspersed with various missions on the surface. Scenes like this are found throughout the run, and they all depict grand, sweeping battles interspersed with more personal moments from Diana. Even in scenes that don't take up entire 2-page spreads, the use of space is incredibly unique. Comic books have traditionally used squares and rectangles for their paneling, but Wonder Woman uses all sorts of shapes and styles. It gives a very unique and distinct flair to the book's art style. The thing that I will heap the utmost amount of praise on is the character designs, especially the design of Diana herself. Wonder Woman's regular design is something I was never really a fan of. William Marston was, again, a man writing a woman, and he based Diana's original outfit on a burlesque outfit. The exposed thighs and shoulders, knee-high boots, copious amounts of cleavage. It's clear that the design is leaning more towards being a sex symbol than offering practical protection. Granted, the argument could be made that the sensual nature of the costume is a good thing, showing a female character who is proud of her body and sexuality and embraces it. The ancient Greeks also famously didn't wear pants because they thought pants were a sign of barbarism, so it makes sense that Diana wouldn't wear pants either. The problem is, as armor for a warrior, this design doesn't do a great job. The Greeks may not have worn pants, but they still wore a skirt or something to protect their legs in battle. Diana's design in Absolute Wonder Woman remedies that problem. Instead of running around in a burlesque outfit, she has actual armor. Her legs and feet are protected with heavy plate. Though she doesn't wear it often, she has a helmet to protect her face. Both her arms are protected by pieces of black plate. If you look closely, you'll see her right hand has slightly thicker plates on it because that is her dominant hand. When she is out of combat, she keeps her left arm partly armored, but her dominant is unarmored so it doesn't hinder daily function. This armor was of course designed to look badass, which it is, but it also functions as actual armor, which is more than I could say for her original look. The character designs I find the most fascinating are those of the gods themselves. We've only seen a handful of the gods so far, but the designs that we have seen are incredible. Typical depictions of the Greek gods in movies, video games, and comics have depicted them as very conventionally attractive people, or at the very least as just humans with special powers. This does make sense, as there is plenty of historical precedent for depicting the gods in this manner. Some of the gods in Absolute Wonder Woman do follow that design ethos. When Apollo appears to Circe in the first issue, he is depicted as a gloriously golden god with his exposed muscles glistening beautifully in his own sunlight. Persephone is a kindly woman wreathed in flowers and greenery. The rest of the gods begin to take steps away from that, however. Hades is humanoid, but he has no physical features. He is simply a walking pillar of blue flame. Hecate glows a brilliant white and has multiple arms similar to depictions of Hindu gods like Vishnu. In flashbacks, Athena takes the form of a giant golden helmet, and her full form is a glorious golden suit of armor styled after an owl. My favorite design is probably Aphrodite, because if there was ever a character that could have been a conventionally attractive bombshell, it was going to be the literal goddess of love and beauty. She doesn't even have clothes on in Hades. Instead, she wears a veil to obscure her features. We have no idea what she truly looks like. That doesn't mean the design isn't sensual. She's soaking wet the first time we see her. It's clear she's not wearing anything underneath, and she's got a fat set of yadongalonga dongalagongas, but it's still a far more restrained approach to her design. It also makes sense given her godly domain. Love is a powerful force that can cause us to make rash decisions, especially ones based on lust, without knowing what truly lies beyond the veil. You could see someone and want to be with them based purely on their physical characteristics without knowing a single other thing about them. Love is both beautiful and terrifying at the same time, and Aphrodite's design reflects that. And finally, before we continue, let's talk about the book's mythology. One thing I want to be clear about is that when it comes to mythology, there is no such thing as canon. Myths by their very nature shift and change over time as things get lost in translation, details are changed by certain parties, or even our understanding and interpretation of the story changes. This extends to any media concerning mythology as well. Percy Jackson, God of War, and Hades all use the same ingredients, but the recipe and final product are all different. These depictions in our media can then influence how the gods are perceived. Absolute Wonder Woman and her mainline counterpart are extensions of that practice, continued additions to the lore and interpretations of classic Greek myths. So, what kind of interpretations does the book lean on? How does it view the gods? By default, the gods are set up to be villains due to the punishment of the Amazons, but also because of the meta-narrative of the absolute universe. The gods are the status quo in Wonder Woman. They have ruled for millennia, plundering humanity as they please. Hecate tells Circe outright that Diana's job is to break the system. However, when it comes to the details of specific myths, the book can be pretty vague or non-committal when it comes to its canon version of events. When Diana turns herself into Medusa, Barbara explains to the group in no uncertain terms that Medusa was raped by Poseidon. She then makes the point that nobody really knows what happened and that stories keep contradicting. Medusa herself acknowledges these inconsistencies in the annual. She says that even she doesn't really remember what happened to her in the temple. Was she on a consensual date with Poseidon and Athena was just angry that her priestess was dating another god? Did Poseidon force himself onto her? Did something else happen entirely? It's been so long that the truth has been lost to the ages and nobody really knows what happened. In other cases, the book will just straight up say, yeah, this thing happened and it's fucked. Persephone tells Diana that the story of how she became queen of the underworld involves a kidnapping, which tells us that Hades likely took her to the underworld by force and tricked her into eating the pomegranate seeds. There is, however, one piece of Greek myth that is consistent throughout almost every interpretation, and that's Zeus being an asshole. The ancient Greeks were suckers for a good tragedy, and what better tragedy than Hera, the goddess of marriage, being trapped in a marriage with a husband who doesn't respect her. Zeus lies, he cheats on her, he forces himself on mortals and other gods. He is a terrible husband. In the mythology book I have, there's even a story about him fucking his adoptive mother on his wedding night. Page 84, it's pretty fucked up. Zeus has yet to make an appearance in the run, but the way he's discussed doesn't paint the best picture of him. In the mainline universe, of course, Zeus is Diana's father. This information has led me to form a theory about Zeus and what happened to Themyscira and the Amazons. In the first issue, Circe tells Diana that the Amazons protected the world from the oldest of monsters. I think this implies that the Amazons would fight monsters and evil men, but they would also take steps against the gods in order to protect humanity from them. They would especially have a bone to pick with Zeus for how he treats mortal women. My theory envisions a scenario where Zeus goes to Themyscira and speaks with Queen Hippolyta to get her to fuck off. Hippolyta would, of course, refuse him and tell him to go to hell. Zeus, incensed with how this mortal woman is speaking to him, would force himself upon her, resulting in Hippolyta giving birth to Diana. The Amazons would then consider this the straw that broke the camel's back and declare open war against Olympus, a war which they would lose. The Amazons would be banished and imprisoned, and Diana would be ripped from her mother and sent to Circe in hell. I want to be clear that the events I have just outlined are a theory and are not canon. The only glimpse of Themyscira or even Hippolyta that we've gotten has been at the end of issue 12. We don't actually know what happened to them. But given what I know about Greek myth and the general vibes of the absolute universe, I wouldn't be surprised if the canon version of events turns out to be somewhat similar to this. Of course, I could always just be talking straight up bullshit and something completely different happens. Maybe Zeus isn't Diana's father in this world. Maybe the Amazons were actually the bad guys. I have no idea. So let's get back to talking about the things that are confirmed with the next major story arc. As My Mother's Made Me spans issues 8 through 12. Issue 8 opens with Diana establishing her own base of operations somewhere outside of Gateway City. She conjures a building called the Hyron to serve as a place of respite for her and her allies. Veronica Cale steps onto the scene properly in this arc as the big bad evil guy of Absolute Wonder Woman. Cale has been in the background of the book so far, just kinda doing shit. Her appearance in Absolute Evil makes it clear that she holds no love for Wonder Woman and sees her as a threat. Personally, I am not attached to Cale as a villain in the slightest. I don't think she's interesting beyond evil woman in suit working for government. I'm still kind of waiting for her character to be built out more, but as it stands, she's just a white Amanda Waller. She even breaks out the Suicide Squad at one point in a later issue. I'm far more invested in Diana's struggles against the gods and the book's interpretations of Greek myth than I am in her fight against the US government. This arc does give us some of that, so let's talk about it a bit. As My Mother's Made Me sees Diana discovering an ancient maze hidden underneath Area 41. While in the maze, she meets a minotaur named Ferdinand, a siren named Petra, and at long last meets her first Amazon, Io. Unclear if this is the same Io who was turned into a cow by Zeus. This is another one of those scenarios where the book remains non-committal with the mythology. Diana ends up freeing everybody who was trapped in the prison, and Ferdinand and Petra join her lineup of supporting characters. Io was set to join them too, but she was struck by a bolt of lightning the moment she left the maze and vanished, presumably because Zeus couldn't reach her underground in the prison, but now that she's out, he could get to her. Diana also found the trident of Poseidon in the maze, which feels like it's building to Poseidon's introduction in the run. And I'm really fucking stoked for that. I loved the Percy Jackson series growing up, and I'm excited to see Poseidon make an appearance. Other than that, nothing much happens in this arc. The flashbacks are concerned with Diana's introduction to Artemis, and we get some background on Veronica Cale and the government, but otherwise, that's about it. So let's move along and jump forward a little bit to issue 16. I want to skip ahead a bit so we can talk about two major characters. They have some of the most interesting development going on besides Diana herself, and I want to spend some time talking about them. The first is, of course, Steve Trevor. Aside from the big arc about him being rescued from hell by Diana, he's taken a backseat of sort to the run. This isn't the Diana and Steve show, it's just Diana. I like this approach because it sort of keeps him on equal ground with the rest of Diana's primarily female supporting cast. A male writer would have given him far more screen time. There is, however, one standout moment from Steve in issue 16 that I want to talk about. Following the attack on Gateway City by the Harbingers and the Tetracide, Steve is called to the Senate to testify about his involvement in the events and his relationship with Diana. If you can all quiet down, I'll try again with my question. Colonel Trevor, serving two masters in fact serves none. But you don't think there was a conflict of interest between yourself, a military man, who has sworn an oath to the United States of America, and the commands of a foreign immigrant on a battlefield? I did what I always try to do, sir. Serve and protect the American people. There was only one person on that beach who understood what was going on, and I did my best to help her solve the problem. Despite the insanity of that day, we didn't lose a single civilian or a single soldier. Without Wonder Woman, I think it's a very different story. She does have a name, does she not, Colonel? She has many names, Senator White, but Gateway City seems to have embraced that one, and since this is about Gateway City, it seemed appropriate. Princess of Hell, Witch of the Wild Isle, those are all unofficial names, am I correct? You'd like paperwork on the name Princess of Hell, Senator? Exactly my point, son. But let's get back to the day in question, shall we? You disobeyed direct orders from your superior off. No, sir. No? No. I might have, had he given me any, but he did not. In his wisdom, I believe he determined that Diana had a better handle on things than we did. I'll remind you, she had just defeated a building-sized monster and all its minions. There was excellent evidence that she was exactly the solution we were desperate for. Following the Gateway City events, I proposed myself as a liaison between Diana and the U.S. military. I've heard of no such because this government insists on seeing Diana as little more than a weapon. I almost immediately recused myself from the position I had created, Senator. I then resigned my commission. No man can truthfully serve two masters, and if the U.S. government wishes to oppose Wonder Woman, then they are on the wrong side of history, and I'll be on the correct side of it, where Diana will also be. I have tried my whole life to be allied with justice. If the United States of America is against Wonder Woman, then in my view, it is no longer on the side of justice. If you want to speak to me again, Senator, you'll need a subpoena. In my Batman video, I remarked on how Bane started as a rebel working against the system before deciding to join it. Steve is almost going through Bane's development in reverse. He started as a soldier, a servant of the system. The government wanted to use him to make Diana part of the system too, but instead of going along with it, he pulled away to work with Diana full-time. He no longer has access to military intel or resources, but he will no longer be used by the system as a tool. His loyalties lie not with the government or his service, but with the people he once swore to protect. The second character I want to talk about is Zatanna. At the end of the previous arc, she was revealed to be a prisoner of Area 481, wearing the mother of all straitjackets. The first time Diana meets Zatanna is at the end of issue 14. Zatanna astral projects to Diana's location and casts some sort of spell on her before vanishing. The next time Diana sees Zatanna is in issue 16. Zatanna is sent by Kale to kill Diana with a bunch of classic Wonder Woman villains.
What, we some kind of Suicide Squad?
Fuck, that movie was ass. Veronica Kale was using some sort of parasite to control the Suicide Squad, and the first thing Zatanna does is cast a spell to remove it from herself. The spell she cast on Diana before was a spell to steal Diana's magic when she was in her presence. She uses Diana's extra magic as a boost to remove the parasite. She then promptly fucks off from the battle, leaving the rest of the team to take on Diana themselves. Diana, of course, mops the floor with them. Kale is very upset with this and orders the deployment of Zatanna's father, Giovanni. Giovanni burns Diana pretty badly and she flies back to the Hyron to heal herself. The arc that starts in issue 16 is still ongoing at time of writing. Issue 19 is part 4 of 5 in this arc and will be releasing on April 22nd, which is about a week from now at time of writing. So, why am I talking about an incomplete arc? Because this is where the gay shit begins. Diana later describes her first experience with Zatanna to Steve as, "I may have been cursed by a beautiful witch." When Zatanna confronts Diana at the gala, she calls her cutie. Later, when Zatanna follows her home, Diana remarks that she doesn't understand why Zatanna seems to be making her so angry. The issues also continue with the flashbacks to Diana's time in hell, and the flashbacks in these issues deal with Aphrodite, the fucking goddess of love. The subtext is barely even subtext at this point. In an interview with Near Mint Condition, Kelly Thompson says outright that she is writing Diana as queer, but that doesn't mean she will be queer on screen. In other non-canon DC stories, Diana was allowed to be queer, but the runaway success and popularity of the Absolute Universe, and Wonder Woman specifically, is making them rethink things a bit. Comics have always had a complicated relationship with queer characters. Chris Claremont, for example, famously did his best to write Mystique and Destiny as a lesbian couple, but he wasn't allowed to come out and say they were a couple. Even as queer people have been moving closer and closer to being more visible and accepted by the world, there is still a shit ton of homophobia built into our media industry. Not the least bit helped by the current political climate, and not at all helped in DC's case by the impending Paramount acquisition. Which is why I find it quite nice to have Kelly come out and say Diana is queer, even if she's not allowed to go anywhere with it. In any case, this kind of representation is something we rarely get to see from a tentpole character like Wonder Woman. It's also nice to have her be simply labeled as queer without resorting to any sort of label. Thompson says that Diana is beyond thinking about people's gender as a construct. She isn't going to see someone and go, "Ooh, I really love this person. Too bad they don't have the right equipment." She can love whoever she wants. I don't believe this is going to turn into queer baiting, at least not as long as Kelly Thompson is at the wheel. I'm confident that even if she isn't allowed to put pen to paper and give the people what they want, she will find a ways around that mandate to make it clear exactly who Diana is on page. There is, of course, the incoming Paramount buyout of Warner Brothers to be concerned with, but I really have no idea how that would affect the comic book side of DC. Paramount is likely buying them for their news properties like CNN or franchises like ACAB Wizards. It also depends on how Kelly personally feels Diana's arc should proceed. During that interview, she said she doesn't think Diana has room for love in her life in a romantic way. She has much bigger fish to fry. That doesn't mean she can't fall in love while she's tackling these challenges, but it doesn't feel right to Thompson that Diana would selfishly pursue a relationship at this point. She's only been on the surface for a couple of months at this point. Let the woman figure her shit out. She's focusing on her career at the moment. Getting back on track, Diana's presence in the Absolute Universe has been an unabashed force for good. Her whole character is built on compassion and kindness. She is a counterweight to a world which has been out of balance for a very long time. Hecate tells Cersei that the scales of balance should lean towards justice, but for some reason they do not. Diana is meant to fix that. She is the beating heart of the forces of justice, and she will not be broken. Issues 13 and 14 are a short mini-arc where Diana has to track down a mysterious creature that has been wreaking havoc across the world. Its first appearance is in Nevada. When Diana goes to fight it, she can feel the creature's energy fucking with her, making her angrier, more aggressive, and smothering her with a sense of darkness. It's also damn near impossible for Diana to land a blow on the creature. It escapes into the night, and in her altered state of mind, Diana gives chase to it. She fights this strange creature all over the world. Uruguay, Mexico, Hawaii, Dominican Republic, and it leaves nothing but a trail of destruction in its wake. Its next attack occurs in Greece at the mythical Oracle of Delphi, and it's here that Diana realizes what this creature is. All magic requires sacrifice. All magic requires that things be in balance. When Diana sent Steve back to Earth, she had to sacrifice her arm. When she turned herself into Medusa, she lost her sense of self and had to be reminded who she was by Steve. This creature that she's been pursuing, the thing that darkens the hearts of those who come close and who cannot be harmed by Diana's attacks, it is balance. If Diana is a gift to the world, a champion for the forces of good, then the forces of evil shall have their own champion. Where Diana is filled with compassion and love, this creature is filled with evil and hate. It is the antithesis of everything Diana stands for. It is the world's way of imposing balance once again. Except that's a fat load of shit! When Diana has this realization, she returns home to speak with Gia, Etta, and Barbara. She shares her realization with the three, and Gia and Etta are like, "Girl, what the fuck are you talking about? Do you see how fucked the world is? There's some pretty awful people running the show. Billionaires taking advantage of people, corporations murdering and polluting as they please. The government has a fucking secret maze prison underground where they do sketchy shit. How is any of that bullshit balance?" And yeah, they're right. The world is out of balance. We as readers, of course, can say that knowing what we know, but even people in the universe understand it. Hecate understood it. That's why she made sure Diana became what she is. Absolute evil outright confirms that the villains are kept on top by the universe itself. If anything, Diana is the counterweight to all this bullshit going on. Diana takes this information and she demands an audience with the one god above the rest of them. Her next encounter with the creature is again in Greece. This time, she lets the creature attack her and lets her blood soak into the earth. She prays to Demeter over and over, demanding an audience with Mother Earth. She is swallowed by the ground beneath her and comes face to face with the grandmother of the gods, Gaia.
You do not belong here, Diana of Themyscira.
Apologies, goddess. I felt I had no other choice.
Humans are quick to say, I hear your request, but I cannot help. The world has sought to correct the balance that you bring, and I cannot object to that.
With respect, goddess, I feel the world has been tricked. With respect, goddess, the world is not in balance. The existence of me and others like me is long overdue, I'm afraid, and even with us, any balance is a long way from being restored. There is an imbalance in this world, goddess, but I don't believe I am the aberration. If you take a closer look for yourself, I think you will see.
It is bold to suggest you know the world better than I, as I am the world.
Sometimes, goddess, the closer you are to something, the harder it can be to see it.
You are right, Diana of Themyscira. Something is wrong with the world, and has been for a very long time. Maybe since the beginning. There is a darkness I do not quite understand. Raise your eyes to me, Princess of Hell. Stand. You will fight this darkness.
Yes, goddess.
You will give your life in my name.
With pleasure.
So be it.
If there is one thing I take away from this book, it's that balance is coming. Our world may not be as challenged as the absolute world, but there are definitely things that are not right with the world. The president of the most powerful country in the world is waging a pointless war. Elected officials are in the pockets of billionaires. Corporations ruin our lives with barely any accountability. Absolute Wonder Woman is about having hope for the world in spite of all these things. Absolute characters like Batman and Superman may symbolize a righteous anger at the way the world is, but Diana represents the hope for what the world could be. Once we tear the old world down, we still need to build a new one, and Diana represents that new world. Her presence in the Absolute Universe means more than balance. It means hope. So, that's it for Absolute Wonder Woman so far. What's next for the future of the run? Well, like I said, there is a story arc actively unfolding in the book called Season of the Witch. Besides sounding like the name of a Destiny 2 season, Season of the Witch of course introduces Toxic Yuri and gives a little more background on Veronica Cale. I'm still not sold on her as a major villain, but I remain optimistic. The most recent issue also ends with the reveal of Diana's third lasso, the Troika, which, come on, that's literally a flogger. She tells Giovanni that Troika knows his sins and will break him of them. William Marston is probably creaming in his grave over this. Hey, did you know the inspiration for Wonder Woman's bracelets came from some bracelets his partner Olive Byrne always wore? Olive Byrne was also related to two of the most famous feminists in history. Marston, Olive, and his wife Elizabeth were part of a sex cult. Rest in peace, you deeply weird and fascinating man. Is there some sort of outside force that is the greatest threat to the run? I mean, Paramount is the big thing to point at, but like I said, it remains to be seen how their ambitions will affect DC Comics specifically. Hell, the government might actually snap to their senses and realize this is a blatant monopoly and block the fucking merge. Otherwise, I think the run remains in a great place. My only gripe with it is the stuff I've already said about Veronica Cale. I don't know much about Wonder Woman's usual villains, but I think she was a strange choice for a big bad evil guy. Wonder Woman is undoubtedly a feminist icon, and the Absolute Universe is about breaking status quos and repressive systems. What system is more repressive than the male patriarchy? So, I thought it would have made sense for her big opponent in the government to be a man. However, I guess Zeus and the other male gods could conceivably play the part of being the male villain. Ancient Greece was famously misogynistic, and it's also not like there aren't plenty of women who are opposed to feminism. One of the biggest opponents of the Equal Rights Amendment was a woman named Phyllis Schlafly. Her activism caused the ERA to fail and it was never signed into law. With that in mind, Veronica Cale may not be the worst person in the world to have as a villain, but I don't know, man. We'll see how things play out. That being said, I will absolutely recommend this run to anybody watching. I went through this in the Batman video, but I am new to the world of comics, and Absolute Wonder Woman has been a delight to read. The run makes me feel like I'm in 5th grade again reading Percy Jackson for the first time. I feel kinda bad for writing it off in the beginning. Thank you all so much for watching. If you like this video, then please consider subscribing to my Patreon and following me on Blue Sky. Your support is what helps me keep doing this thing that I love doing, and every view, every dollar, every like and comment means the world to me. So thank you so much for watching and have a nice day. How many times am I going to call Hayden Sherwood Hayden Christensen in this video? Well, fuck, I didn't call him Hayden Christensen, but I have been calling him Sherwood instead of Sherman. Colonel Trevor, I'm not quite sure what an anime is, but you're being a jackass. When Zatanna confronts Diana at the galley, like on a ship, pin her to the wall in the galley. Senator, this hearing is some Kentucky Fried bullshit. Son, are you making fun of me?